Okay, let's see. Since our live video is starting, I will just make sure this is working. And yes, we are officially live. It's been a while since we've been on Facebook, so I wanted to make sure all of our technology was working here. And welcome to all who are joining us live or catching this recording. I am very honored to be here with Isabel, who I have just met, honestly, but I've heard so much from our amazing team about. And she's joining me today to talk about her own journey with postural, let me hope I can say it right, postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome, if you're not familiar with that word. And she came and worked with us for physical therapy and occupational therapy, and was open to sharing some of her story too. So I'm very thankful for that. Thank you, Isabel, for sharing. And I think most people really want to know about you and your story and kind of how you ended up at Reactive anyway. So maybe we could start there.
Sure. So I'm 28 now, and I think I kind of can't pinpoint when I started to have symptoms of POTS, but it's been since I was a kid for sure. And I kind of just thought I was unathletic for most of my life. And have also, as I got older, started to have symptoms of hypermobility. I don't have Ehlers-Danlos, but I do have some like localized hypermobility that contributes. So I wasn't even, it wasn't on my radar at all until when I was about 25. I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, and I had a really hard time with that at first. And that dealing with that made my POTS symptoms go like just bananas. And that also happened when COVID started, which meant I wasn't walking or standing. Most of the time I was on the couch. And so that also made my POTS symptoms really, really bad. So long story short for that, a couple of years later, I was able to get diagnosed with POTS finally. And at that point, it was pretty bad. I was mostly, I mean, for me, people have all different kinds of experiences. It was bad for what I had experienced up until that point. And I was mostly couch bound at home. And so once I got a diagnosis, which is like so relieving, you can finally start trying to figure out how to feel better. I found Reactive because everything I get diagnosed with, I'm like on all the forums, I'm looking online, I'm reading all the papers that I can. And so one of the things I did was join a bunch of Facebook groups for people with POTS, and one of them was a local group. And I had also read that physical therapy can help a lot. And so I searched in those groups for what offices people recommended, and Reactive was mentioned there. So that's how I found it.
Okay. Well, thank you to whoever mentioned us for helping you find the way. But that is an important piece. Clearly, you're kind of a go-getter with getting information, but when you have something that isn't always well understood by everybody, that having somebody that understands it can be helpful. So at this point in your, and it sounded like the perfect storm of things, Hashimoto's, and then we're like on lockdown, so your overall activities has changed like most of us, but a big double whammy for you with POTS as well. And not able to move or tolerate like being upright a lot. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really hard for me for a while to tease out what symptoms were what, because I also had like some stomach stuff going on. Like I just had, when your thyroid goes out, just everything kind of follows. So it was hard to tell what was a symptom of what. But yeah, I think the most noticeable for my day to day was that I really couldn't tolerate standing very much at all. Like I was sitting in the shower. I like couldn't really do dishes because I couldn't stand at the sink. Um, Anywhere I had to go, I had to make sure I was able to sit down there. Like I couldn't go to museums or anything like that. And I think the most visible symptom for other people was like every time I would stand up, I'd have to like touch the ground or like touch my knees and like make sure that I wasn't going to fall over.
Yeah.
It was like really, really intense every time I stood up. But I had, so it's so nice to say now, and this is why I'm doing this interview, that I don't have a
Yeah.
lot of symptoms anymore. And so I knew
Mm.
there were, I could, 2 or 3 years ago, I could have mentioned like 15 other things that were happening. Like,
Oh.
wait, I have hyperadrenergic POTS, so I was having like the adrenaline rushes at night, and
Mm.
um, it like messes with your digestion too. Like you're not really the motility is not happening correctly, and so I was just having issues all over. Cold hands and feet, anything that like is
Mhm.
related to circulation was happening too. So it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, to say the least. And yeah, I think everybody kind of thinks of the initial thing that you said, like, oh, when you get up, like well, one, you can barely tolerate it, and you have to make sure that you can steady yourself. But all of those other things that the autonomic nervous system drives, which is like almost all of our body functions, like
Yeah,
can go awry.
I think
And
the one that surprised me the most was I'd had symptoms of Hashimoto's for a while before I got treated, and so I was so used to being really cold all the time. Hypothyroidism makes me really cold, and so once I got on medication, I always say I joke with my boyfriend. I'm like, it's the biggest curse of my life. Like I fixed my cold intolerance, and then I realized I had POTS and I have a heat intolerance too. So it was like in the summer, I was so used to wearing like sweatshirts in the summer. And then when that was gone, but I still had POTS, I was like, I couldn't tolerate heat at all. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So from one like end to the other end of like the temperature regulation. And here you are in California
Yeah.
too, of like we've had some real extremes of weather too. Like
Yeah.
not helpful if it's hard to regulate. Now you hinted at this. Things have the symptoms have improved. So kind of share where you are now.
Um, so I think right now I have been very lucky that physical therapy was like incredibly helpful for me. And so I'm mostly trying to maintain everything that I learned at Reactive, but also the level of fitness that I got to. So
Mhm.
um, right now I don't have too many symptoms. I still get kind of that there's a feeling I get when I stand up, but it's not, I don't have to bend over or like my vision doesn't darken or anything anymore. Um, I can hike like 5 or 6 miles if I want to. Usually, at least once a week, I'm going on a 4 mile hike.
Mhm.
And I do stationary bike a couple times a week. I can go to concerts and stand for the whole time now. Yeah,
That's a big one.
yeah, it's that was really huge for me too because I really like going
Yeah.
to live music, and I really like hiking and camping, and so I'm able to do those things without having like I still plan for them. I'm always going to have to plan certain accommodations, but I don't have to say no anymore.
Yeah, that is massive. And you're also describing like my husband and I whole dating. We were going to concerts and going camping
Yeah.
and like hiking, like LA. Oh, such a great place for that too. But I a lot of standing, a lot of time upright. So I'm curious, so you worked with PT and OT, and you mentioned the PT was really helpful and kind of you built up this level of fitness. What are the things that were most helpful for you in PT?
Um, I think, I mean, because I had done all this online research and it's, sometimes can take some time to like get into doctors, get into reactive when someone's available. So I had already started trying to do the CHOP protocol by myself.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like making a little bit of progress, but once I got to PT, I actually didn't know that I was hypermobile until I got to reactive. And I had been in and out of physical therapy for the symptoms of that, but no one had ever identified it. Um, and it's really, if that's happening, it's really hard to make any kind of progress with exercise unless you're treating that. And so I
Yeah.
think all of the like joint stabilizing things that I did with Will, my physical therapist,
Yeah.
was like I learned so much more about myself and how to recognize what were symptoms and when that was happening when I was exercising, and how to manage that and how to build up strength so that it wouldn't happen. That was extremely helpful.
Mhm.
I had not had that anywhere else at any other physical therapy office. And I also like, because my whole life I had been like unathletic, I didn't have any experience with trying to get in shape. And so just having
Mm,
someone to guide the like cardiovascular fitness part of it too was really helpful.
yeah. Yeah. That's great. And now there's this like great updated CHOP protocol too. That's like, I think when I was talking to Will, like most of our team is kind of individualized and mastered the like CHOP, which if people aren't familiar with it, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, I think that's where the CHOP comes from, and they created a great protocol for progressing exercise and activity based on heart rate for a person with POTS, and they just updated it too. They just presented it at a conference that we all went to.
I know.
Um,
That's so cool.
yeah, it's cool because there are some folks that can't even tolerate the first stage too. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, you were able to kind of get started on your own, but you needed more guidance, and woo, like that somebody helped discover and help you learn about what your body needed that with localized areas of hypermobility, which is great.
It was,
And then, yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, Isabel. No.
I think I don't know what they've changed it to, but I know that the CHOP protocol is already like a easier version of a different protocol.
Yes.
And even though like I was able to tolerate the first couple months is what I did by myself, and then I got stuck because I for what they had laid out, I wasn't tolerating the rest of it.
Mhm.
And so it was also helpful to go to physical therapy. I think like most people growing up here in the US are like taught about competitive sports and pushing yourself with
Right.
fitness and like, no pain, no gain type of thing. But it was really helpful to have a physical therapist show me that like if I'm feeling pain, I'm doing way too much and
Mm,
I can take it slow and it can actually feel easy. And that's still really helpful and you make a lot of progress.
yeah. Yeah. And you made the progress. So
Yeah.
it's not a lie. It's not a lie. It can be hard for people. You're right. I think in the US or anybody's but who has been a part of like anything competitive to be
Yeah.
like, oh, actually, if I go a little slower, my body actually responds better. And so you're definitely a living testament to that, which is awesome. And then you had not as much occupational therapy, but you had OT as part of your program too. I'm curious of what you learned about yourself and life. I always feel like I'm learning about my own life from our OTs, but what did
Yeah.
you learn in OT?
Um, I mean, I had already been attempting to with like a psychotherapist, and I had seen her before I had any awareness of any illness stuff. But pacing that had been part of what I was aware of already, but it's something that's really hard to implement. And so I think one of the best things that came out of OT for me was like practical tools and strategies for actually how to implement that and do what I wanted to during my day, and not just have to feel like pacing was cutting everything out. Um,
Mm,
and so working up to managing fatigue in a way that was actually emotionally manageable and not just kind
mm,
of like a lot of doctors are just like, stop doing everything. And that's your life now.
yeah.
And OT was like, I had never had such concrete tools for how to check in with myself and how to manage small symptoms that came up when I was trying to do day-to-day things and not just like exercising. Um,
Mm.
and no, I knew of a lot of like this is true for Will too. All of the like accessibility aids, mobility aids, and like products that are available to help. I think
Mm-hmm.
especially with POTS and hypermobility, there's, you know, if your bones are loose, you kind of need you need some help. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, so that was super helpful too, to like have someone who was really knowledgeable about what physical items I could have that would help me and
Mm-hmm.
which ones were good, which products were, you know, not good, what brands were helpful.
Yeah, yeah. That makes me think. I know you mentioned a lot of things that you were back to, like hiking and concerts. What about in your day to day? Like, because I imagine that maybe you weren't able to work or do a lot during the day when you couldn't tolerate being upright. And where are you now?
I'm doing, I'd say 90% of the things I want to do, which is really,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, I I mean, day to day, even just at home, it's been really helpful. Even I live with my partner, and so it's been great for like household management. Like I can do dishes now. I can, you know, bend
Mhm.
over and do the laundry. Um, and it's not all either falling behind or relying on my partner to do everything, which is
Mhm.
great. A much more like balanced ecosystem, I think. But also, it was, you know, when it's hard to stand up off the couch, it's hard to like go get in your car and then go do stuff. And then like having to, when you get there and you're like, no, I have to get up. So
Mhm.
it's so much easier. Like it used to be a huge thing if I like left the house and did something on my own in a day. And now I'm
Mhm.
like, I can go out 3 times and not even think about it and drive around and get up and it's fine. Um, just everything has been easier. Getting up off the couch to like go get ready for bed is
Mhm.
easier. Just everything.
Yeah, that's that's awesome. And I think really helpful to hear for folks that maybe have had POTS for a while, maybe have tried things like you did, like tried
Yeah.
progressing through, maybe got stuck, maybe have tried various other devices or diet or other things and are still stuck on the bed or the couch. And I'm saying that's only because I met most of those people. Too, and hopeful to know that you can get back to like 90% of the things you want to do. And you have to say 100% at some time, Isabel. Like this
Yeah.
is not an ending, it's not the end of your journey. Um, and I'm curious, in going to PT and OT, what were some of the favorite things that you did or you explored? I know you shared a lot about what you learned from them, but do you have some favorites?
Um, yeah, I think just seeing how the strength training exercises I did with Will were fairly simple, not like,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say easy because it's not like they were easy. They weren't
Yeah.
painful, but they weren't easy. But they're simple and it was really cool to feel capable of those
Mm-hmm.
things, and see
Mm-hmm.
progression to things that I had never been able to do before, like not even just when the pot symptoms got really bad, but like ever in my life. And seeing those things start to add up was really, really cool. Um, and I think there was much more focus at reactive on what I wanted my life to look like instead of a lot of times when you see doctors, they're very like metric focused or just like
Yeah.
symptoms that affect if you can like reactive help would affect like for I was trying to get back to work and they absolutely helped with that. But there was also a focus on like how do you have fun? How do you want to have fun? How can we reincorporate that? And so I think the times that I like, there were a couple of sessions I had with Noya that were focused on like, you love hiking or like you love going to concerts. Like, how can we make that happen? So that
Yeah.
was,
Yeah. Yeah. That's my like favorite thing about OT is like actually getting to some of the life things. That's great. Um, I wonder, so I think as I was looking back, so you had Naoya as the director of our POTS and our hypermobility program. So you likely had your consultation with Naoya. And I'm curious, like before you got started, were there any things you were like concerned about or you're like, I'm not sure that I'm ready or I want to do this program, anything like that?
I think, I mean, I think going into it, I was almost reluctant to do OT because I didn't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard of it mostly in context for, and I know that this happens at reactive too, like for people with fine motor skill struggles, and I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
having those kind of issues, or like I just didn't understand how it was gonna benefit me. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, so I was like a little hesitant with that, but I'm like so glad that I did it because it was, I don't think that the PT, it would have helped by itself, but like having them both together is why I can do stuff now. um, and I think the OT gave me a lot of skills for like if I ever have a flare up, or even I still use the OT skills every day, even though I'm not
Mhm.
struggling too much. It's like why I'm
Mhm.
not struggling is because I had the OT. So I think like
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand that when I had my consultation, and then I don't think there was anything else I was like reactive. It was like a little, the office was a little far away from my place, so I was like
Mm.
reluctant to drive over there, but it was worth it.
I know I'm always just like, oh, you live outside of like the 5 mile radius
Yeah,
of driving in LA, right? It's it's definitely a concern for me. I'm a Southern California girl, and it's like it makes a big impact. And I think that's another thing that we do, not usually with folks with POTS and hypermobility, because that's not what's needed, but with a lot of our other programs, we do intensive daily therapy. And I think you had maybe like visits of PT and 5 visits of OT, at least like initially. It doesn't have to be a whole lot because
yeah,
you're learning and implementing things, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that's like another message I feel like I want to tell people is like when you're progressing through, some people might need more because you kind of started and you had already started building some capabilities for your system, and we just kind of got to take you to the next like level. So some people might need more, but it's actually intensive therapy would be contraindicated actually, like it would wipe out your system. Kind of having this like graded approach of therapy. And was it about once a week
Yes, it was
for
one.
each? Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. Um, and then if somebody was kind of on the fence about coming to reactive or doing PT or OT, and they have POTS and hypermobility like you, what might you share with them?
I think that you mentioned it earlier, but POTS is so individual specific. Um, and one of the main reasons I wanted to go to physical therapy was because I was not getting help at doctors' offices. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
I think 5 or 6 different doctors now, and I like still don't really have a good person managing my POTS. It's like really, and it's been 2 or 3 years now since I got diagnosed, so it's really hard to find knowledgeable practitioners. And
Mm-hmm.
so coming to a place where I knew that they were going to know what they were doing was really really helpful. And it was really nice to have a program that was actually tailored to me, because even so many of the treatments for POTS, like the medications or even like compression, doesn't work for everyone, or
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. It was really nice to go to reactive and have practitioners who actually listened to me when I said something didn't work or I said something did.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times you go to a doctor and they're like, do this, and you say, I know that doesn't work for me, and they look at you like you're insane. And so it was nice to have someone knowledgeable of that individualized treatment, but it was also really nice to go to someone who had a lot of experience with other POTS patients, and so had
Mm,
like the recommendations for what products were there were. I got referred to a lot of other specialists that, like, other than cardiology and neurology, reactive had a lot of other referrals to doctors that other patients had really liked, and that was really
mhm,
helpful. So I think if someone's on the fence, I think the like most special part of reactive was just the like depth of knowledge and resources that everyone there had that I have never found somewhere else.
mhm. Yeah, I am very proud of our team. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And it does make a difference. Most folks we meet, like you, have been to multiple doctors who said, oh, well, this medication works for everybody, or this compression works for everybody. And I'm like, how many people have you seen? Because I've definitely seen it not working for people. And it's frustrating because that's not actually helpful just to say, well, it should work for you.
Yeah.
um, and I think it says a lot too about you to like, well, that's not helpful. I'm going to keep moving on. Although that you should really have. Um, I wish more medical providers were a little more open minded, and maybe just knowledgeable about some of these things. Um, and I'm curious too because you've been to physical therapy other places as well. Um, and we have a lot of clinicians that also watch these videos and learn from them. I wonder what message you might share with other clinicians from your experience.
I think at a lot of other offices, specifically physical therapy, I all of the health stuff that I've done in the last couple years since I got really sick, I have obviously been treating symptoms, but also worked really hard at getting to like what is causing this. Like, is there an underlying thing that's causing this? And so, like, sometimes you find it, and then treating that can really help. And for
Mhm,
me, a lot of that was hypermobility, but none of the other physical therapy offices I'd been to had checked for it, treated me for it, and I was going for issues that you can have without hypermobility. It was a lot of like
mhm,
muscle pain and that kind of thing. Um, but because I I wasn't evaluated by someone who was either knowledgeable or took the time, either not sure, but it was tough to have any long lasting benefits when I wasn't aware of or treating whatever was underlying. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So our message to clinicians is please screen for hypermobility. And screen for POTS too. I think this is something that I think about. Like you even mentioned having some symptoms and things as a kiddo, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow, that would have been great to know about yourself when you were young too.
Yeah. And it
um,
also that reactive too, they screen for, I know, a lot of other things other than just what I had, like, because I didn't know I had hypermobility, and they didn't just screen
yeah.
for that. It was like other stuff too. And especially with something like hypermobility, where if you have it, you've had it your whole life, a lot of the symptoms feel normal. And so it's really hard.
Right.
Part of the diagnosis the trouble is that you go to the doctor and you don't even mention half your symptoms because you think that they're normal. And
Yeah.
so, like a lot of my first session with Will, he was asking all these questions that I was like, how is this even related? And how do you know that I feel that way? So
Oh.
that was really, I think, really special about reactive too, was them already knowing what questions to ask and like what
Mhm.
possible symptoms were, instead of relying on me to say to mention something that I'd felt my whole life that I didn't even know was not normal.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. That's really, really powerful. And in some of these things, even when we like learn about Hashimoto, it's like, oh, well, there's like triads of things that can occur. And so some of that is like knowledge, but also experience. I mean, I would say that's why we share these videos with clinicians. I always say I learn more from every single person I interact with, like yourself, than a lot of textbooks, because you're sharing this really rich experience of your life, and this is going to inform like those next questions that I'm going to ask and all of that. So this is um I want to thank you for sharing that message for other clinicians, for other patients too. And what's next for you? You're gonna you keep hiking, you keep going to concerts. What's next for your life, Isabel?
Oh man. I'm also thanks to a lot of the work I've done at Reactive, like ready to actually go back to work. So I've been looking for work. Hopefully that will happen in the near future. And I think mostly when I look to the future, I have spent so much time over the last couple of years like just dealing with the day to day and figuring out how I'm gonna survive the next like couple days. And so it's nice to not have to worry about that. Beyond
Yeah.
having beyond looking forward to getting a job, I have mostly just been enjoying and figuring out how I'm maintaining fitness, which is uh not as daunting as I thought it was going to be, but a definitely something that I have to think about a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And when you live with POTS, it's like, okay, this is an ongoing
Yeah.
maintaining, right? So it's kind of like taking a medication, but it's like activity to maintain what your cardiovascular system needs. But that is really meaningful, to kind of be like, I just want to survive the next day to day, and now I get to look ahead. And yeah, and next step of working, and that's amazing, be able to do that. So well, thank you so much for it. Was so nice to meet you. This is my first time to get to meet you and hear your story too. So I'll be one of the many at Reactive cheering you on as you continue to grow. So thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
happy to do it. I really love working with Reactive. So
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day. And we'll stay in touch.
thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.